An international think tank, the Senlis Council, is warning Western governments that the current approach of the war on terror is creating a political space in which so-called extremists have become legitimate political actors. In a new report on the situation in Afghanistan and Somalia, the think tank makes a number of recommendations aimed at preventing the spread of extremism in both countries. Nina Arif has more.
In its latest report, foreign policy think tank the Senlis Council looks at the situation in Afghanistan and Somalia, drawing parallels between the emergence of what it calls extremist groups in both regions. In a press briefing in London today, Senlis Council representatives spoke of the inability of the international community to curtail the violence, particularly in Somalia, which has had no effective government for over 17 years now.
You know, there's fighting every day and every night, killings in the streets without any accountability from actors on all sides. You know, one dramatic similarity we saw there compared to Afghanistan is the inability of the international community to come to grips with delivering aid to conflict zones.
The Senlis Council's report says there are various similarities between the tactics used by armed groups in Afghanistan and Somalia, both in methods of recruiting and also in the nature of attacks carried out against foreign troops. A worrying finding in the report is that Somalia has in the past year seen a dramatic increase in what's described as insurgency-related violence, said to stem from the aggressive US policy, such as bombing campaigns which kill innocent civilians. Both countries are described as breeding grounds for extremism. But more significantly, the report links all of these things to the US's so-called war on terror policies.
I think what the US has done with their war on terror policy is really exacerbated the problems in Afghanistan and Somalia. So we're seeing an establishment of a political space within those countries that's now being exploited by Afghanistan's Taliban and Al-Shabab in Somalia.
And so in many ways, the report suggests that the US's policy in Afghanistan and Somalia has in fact had the opposite effect, in that it's increased anti-US sentiment.
Despite what the United States has said about attempting to stabilize these regions and to stop the growth of the insurgencies, their own policies, the bombing campaigns, the lack of aid, these types of aggressive policies have in fact had a blowback effect and allowed the insurgencies to grow and recruit based on propaganda discussing these types of aggressive policies. So in fact the war on terror policies that were meant to address these insurgencies and try and minimize them and to stop their growth have had just the opposite effect. They've played into the hands of the insurgencies, allowed them to become legitimate political actors in both Somalia and in southern Afghanistan.
But there are also a number of recommendations in the report. It calls for a fast track of action whereby aid is delivered efficiently to the hundreds of thousands of Afghan and Somali refugees, and also a change in current policy, including an end to all bombing operations in Somalia. But whether or not these recommendations are taken notice of is something which is yet to be seen. Nina Arif, Islam Channel News.